only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. Last week, for those of you who are listening to the last podcast, I had a really interesting email from Brian, and Brian sent me a series of questions. I won't repeat the questions because you can just listen to the podcast, but I thought it would be quite fun to quickly review the answers that I gave and what Brian thought of those answers. I won't go into too much detail because obviously some of it is very personal to Brian and his family, but enough just to, I think, give you guys an impression that some of the things that I managed to convey seem to be very real. So I'll just read the beginning of the email, and it said, "Thank you very much for your podcast dedicated to my questions. You're truly a wonderful person, thank you. Thank you for that. I will try not to make this a long email so as not to occupy your time, but you're good. I have a listen to the podcast again for more keywords and meanings, but a lot of what you said was true and accurate. I've underlined the keywords you mentioned. Now, the biggest area for me was probably about shoes. I really picked up something about shoes, and it turned out that his father was a shoe salesman. I also picked up hunting, gardening, trips to the mountains and things, and yes, apparently his family loved trips to the mountains, to the Adirondacks. I also picked up, I remember, about a car, maybe a classic car or a special car, and indeed Larry, I think his name was, had a 1968 Chevy Impala convertible that he loved and cherished deeply. And various other things carried on that way. I mentioned the mother was interested in teaching. Although she wasn't a teacher, she did love teaching people how to cook and really enjoyed doing that. I mentioned painting and art. She was a very keen artist. She loved making ceramic figurines and painting them. I also mentioned a dog, and she apparently made a dog statue, and he still has that. As far as the potential contact with the nephew who committed suicide, sadly, yes, he did love swimming, and he had an older brother, Michael. Now, I didn't mention that. I mentioned somebody called Kevin, and I'm still not terribly sure where Kevin fits in, but now that, of course, I have the time to look back, I do remember hearing the name Michael, but I didn't say anything because probably one of my oldest friends in the world, and he lives in London, is called Michael. So I just thought this was a bit obvious, and maybe that's me sort of over-censoring what I was saying, but that was very interesting for me as well. And yes, the parents were quite successful, although they weren't doctors, they were very successful in a small business, and they wanted the son to take over for many years, but he never wanted to, and I think there must have been some pressure on him because of that. And in the end, the young nephew Jeff, who did committed suicide, and he got involved in drugs and all sorts of other rather nasty things. And he was a very lonesome sort of guy. Towards the end, he did close himself off in his bedroom a lot, and that sort of indication of being in a cave. I got caving very strongly. Brian thinks that might be related to the fact that he had his bedroom and it was like a cave and it was closed off from everybody. So yes, that was very interesting to me, and I think in a way it proved that a lot of what I managed to receive was accurate and actually relevant to Brian's questions. So I thought I'd just pass that one on. I have also received another email, and I love these emails, so please just take the time and send me an email and ask me some questions. Ask me about a concept that you would like me to try to clarify through my spirit guide, whoever may choose to come through. So I think it's really the way to go for me, and I think it really helps me focus my energies. But I had another email that came in last week, and it's from a lady called Shelby. and I can read you the email. She said, I just started listening to your podcast yesterday and finished up with episode 5. A lot of what you're reiterating makes so much sense compared to what another psychic has told me. I want to become more open and able to retrieve messages or receive messages just out of the goodness of my heart. However, I can't tell if these are thoughts or if they're just messages from someone or something else. So yes, I think Shelby was quite interested in understanding what she must be feeling, and it must be pretty much what I went through, and she's not sure whether this is just ringing in her ears or some sort of distraction, and how should she really concentrate her mind so she can channel whatever may be trying to come through. She also, I think by reading this, I think she wonders why she hasn't been able to make any communication with her mother. And I think she'd probably be quite interested if that could happen. There was an indication, I think, from another medium that Shelby saw that somehow the mother hadn't moved on, and maybe because if she had moved on, and that's okay, perhaps that's why she hasn't made contact. Or maybe I got that wrong. Maybe it's because she doesn't want to move on, and I don't know. We'll find out, I think. And then there was some other talk here about her aunt, who'd been someone who helped with people who had problems with drugs and, interestingly enough, suicide. And is this aunt still helping people in the other dimensions? And I think that's all very interesting, and I certainly would try to focus a little bit on that. But before we do, I wanted to clarify again something that we were talking about last time, about people who die and what happens to you after death. And it was a very, very strong feeling that I had actually reached some sort of epiphany last week with Titan explaining to me what death is. And I had a conversation with my friends Isabel about this, and I wanted just to quickly mention that and what it seems to have concluded in my mind, and maybe more will come through today. I think, in fact, it's rather like the introduction. There is no death. We never die. We merely get absorbed into a greater consciousness that represents probably all the lives that we've ever had, and probably we're part of a greater dynamic where there are thousands and limitless numbers of other lives that are part of that consciousness. So I get the very strong feeling that what happens to us when we physically die, our bodies die, is that at that point we stop being that person that we are, that all that personality gets reabsorbed back into this greater consciousness. So, of course, then that begs the question, what are mediums doing and what are spiritualists doing when they say they're talking to dead people? Well, I don't know, because I'm not omnipotent, but I think what's really strongly coming through is that you're not actually really talking to that person who was alive. You're talking to, and this is probably the best way I can describe it, you're talking to some sort of bot, or as my friend Linda said, it's almost like in Harry Potter, a Horcrux, where there's memories of the person who was alive. And all those memories, everything about that person up to the point that they died, never dies. It is part of the consciousness. So although the body is gone, that consciousness is like a recording. It's like a nugget of what that person was, and it stays forever in that consciousness. So what a medium is doing, and perhaps what I'm doing mainly, is contacting that consciousness, which is alive and well in terms of what we understand, but it doesn't move on. It doesn't become, it doesn't continue its life, its human life. It stops, but it will be able to respond to questions of memory, and probably attitudes and feelings concerning life as if it was alive. But yes, I suppose that makes sense to me, because it would be quite daft if you died and you spent eternity being just the self you were on Earth. But of course it does mean you have to be careful that if you're asking a medium, or even if you're asking me, or if I receive a message from someone who clearly has passed on into another dimension, I'm not really talking to that person who was alive. I'm talking to almost a reconstruction of all the memories of that person that was alive, almost like a computer bot that can act like that person. Now, again, when I was thinking this, my spirit guide was telling me too that this isn't to say that it's deceptive in any way. It's not deceptive in any way. You're talking to the consciousness that is a collective consciousness of that person, but it's also that person is in you because you're part of that consciousness. So the idea is that, the dead never actually leave you. If you're connected to these people, they are inside you forever. And to probably answer that question for Shelby, why has she not really heard from her mother? The thing that came really clearly through my mind is that, well, Shelby, I think the problem is that you haven't managed to attune your radio receiver to be able to pick up your mother. And that's something that I think I discussed in one of the very first episodes, how I do it. And it's something that just comes naturally to me. I am able to tune my radio receiver to the frequency where these consciousnesses are communicating to me. So I can only say to you, you need to practice that. And perhaps, again, what's coming through to my mind now is when you hear these voices, don't worry that it may be your mind, or it may be your higher self, or it may be your imagination. That really doesn't matter. I mean, if I worried about that, I would be having a terrible problem doing this podcast. And, I have a terrible imposter syndrome before I start an episode because I don't know what's coming through. And I'm not terribly sure whether this is, what I'm hearing I can really believe are people in other dimensions. But it was very reassuring, obviously, that I've done it a few times and it's been shown that it is true. And obviously Brian, in his very kind email, has reiterated that a lot of what I managed to convey was accurate and clearly did come from other consciousnesses. So I'd certainly tell you, Shelby, just practice and actually just try writing down, I suppose, all these impressions that you get. Or just ask yourself some questions and see what pops into your mind. So yeah, just to clear that up then, and I obviously now realize, having said what I've said, that maybe that might be a problem for some people, particularly established mediums or even societies that claim that they're talking to dead people, and these dead people are alive and well in their own form that they were in when they died. And I'm afraid, from my point of view, it seems to me that's really not true at all. But there again, having said that, I'm getting this message through Titan saying that I shouldn't say that it's not true at all. It's my impression. It's what I feel. And impressions can be different from person to person. What may be true to me may not be true to other people. So she's actually saying to me that if a person believes that somebody who's died is living on, then as far as that person is concerned, that person is living on, because it's inside you, it's inside me, it's inside the person who's passed on. And it is perfectly possible, because it is a consciousness, to ask it questions and to treat it like a person who's alive. But it's always quite interesting to me that most of the people that I've had contact with now are talking in the past tense. They're talking about their lives. Maybe that's also because of the questions I ask. And they're talking about memories, and they're talking about people that they were and things that had happened to them. And we haven't really had an awful lot of discussion about what may be happening to them now, apart from perhaps the choices that they can make and the lives that they can choose to lead and the people that they choose to be with. And I think I had a mention of earlier that there was this famous guy from the rock band Rush, Neil Peart, and he was the one who kind of came through to me at one point very early on and was very keen to be able to use me as a vehicle to be able to not only show people that there is life after death, but also to convey some information to me, to some relatives of his or friends of his. I'm not too sure. I haven't heard from anyone yet, maybe because my podcast hasn't reached them. But most definitely he's of the opinion that he's able to convey that information. And I think it's quite important that he does, but we haven't really heard from him lately. So without further ado, I'd like to concentrate a little bit now, and I'll come back to you in a minute, and as soon as I'm ready, I will see if there's anybody who would like to come through and speak. Well, quite interestingly, while I've been just being quiet, sitting here and you don't really feel that because I pushed the pause button. I had this really very strong feeling, and it started this morning, and I'm actually doing this podcast a day earlier than I normally do, and the reason for that is that I'm unable to commit myself to doing it tomorrow at the normal time, which upsets me a little bit because it's kind of the pact that I have, is that I make myself available on a Wednesday. So I'm really hoping that Titan and everyone will forgive me for doing it on a Tuesday. But I'm actually off for Christmas now and sitting at home, and I had this really very strong urge to get dressed and to go to this very small church that exists in the town that I live in. And so I did. I went to walk to the church, and it's a church, I think it was originally founded in the year 972, so it's very, very old. And I went in there, and I was just wondering, why am I being asked to come in there? And now I know, because I have an entity that is with me, and it's an entity that I believe used to be on a shipping boat that used to go up and down the Rhine, where of course I'm located in Cologne. And this entity wishes to come through and talk. So I would gladly like to talk to you. So if you could tell me what your name is. And he's actually telling me his name is Abraham. And when did you die? And he's saying long ago. He's saying nearly 400 or 500 years ago, he's saying. And how did you die? And he's telling me that actually he died because there was an invasion, and there was a terrible fight in this area where I am, and it involved warring forces, and he was again I think a soldier, and he was defending his church, or this area down there, and he died very close to that church. I'd like to ask you then, how would you describe your experience of death, and is there something that you could tell us about what life is like on the other side? I'm getting a huge amount of stuff through. It's very emotional. I think he was crying. He was upset. He was sad. However, this particular consciousness that he was at the time, he feels that he was very proud to be doing what he was doing, and that he has a lesson that he learned in his life that I think he's trying to convey to me. I see very clear in my mind's eye a really old cannon. It's something obviously medieval or something like that. And he seems to be operating this cannon and firing it from the shore of where he is to, I think, enemy ships or enemies somewhere out there. So he seems to be showing me this battle that he was fighting. Ah, yes, he's actually here to tell me something I was actually discussing with someone the other day as well, which is really, really interesting. And he's trying to show me how stupid it is that we as humans kill each other, and how we have wars. And he was saying that if only people knew just how pointless it was, because you're actually killing people that are part of you, that are part of your consciousness. We all are connected. And every single one of us, no matter where we live in the world, whatever our race, color, creed, we are all connected to a great consciousness. And we are obviously more aware of that when we move on to the next dimension. So he's saying it's very ironic, and it's quite funny, really, how we sort of put so much stock as human beings into killing each other and having wars. And if only we knew the stupidity of it, the futility of it, and how really, I suppose, yes, love is really the most important thing. If we just stopped doing that, the resources that we would have at our disposal. And he's telling me, yes, he's showing me this army and this fighting and how irrelevant it is, he's saying. If you think about it, he says, nobody remembers him. Abraham says, nobody remembers me. Nobody cares about my life. I had a life that was really important to me. I had a family. But who's going to remember that hundreds of years later, when he's just another casualty of a war, another dead person, a dead person that doesn't even have a grave, he tells me. And he says that would be the lesson that he would want to tell us now, is that how do we try to stop human beings from fighting? How do we make people realize that they're all connected? They're as close as brothers and sisters, as family. And if only they could really realize that and do something with that information, then maybe there would be no more fighting, no more wars, and all the resources that are used for wars and fighting could be used more productively to helping people and helping sick people, helping develop our consciousness better in the society. I think that's a nice message, and thank you very much, Abraham. Is there anyone else who would like to pass a message through me to anyone? Well, I have to say this as it is, but it's a very interesting feeling. It became a physical feeling as well just now, that my nose was starting to close up, and I felt that I needed to sneeze or sniffle, and then I had this very strong feeling that there is a collective entity there, and it's something to do with viruses, and it's to do with flu viruses or AIDS viruses or COVID viruses. And the virus is I'm being told, and I'm not sure who's telling me this, the virus is a very ancient form of life, and has a valid form of consciousness too, and has a purpose way beyond what we understand. He's saying that the viruses do not exist just to cause us trouble, to cause us to be sick. He's telling me very clearly that we are, in a way, fighting against viruses because of that, but we're actually missing out that viruses are an integral part of the human experience, but are also a valid life form of their own, and have a purpose beyond just being agents to cause us illness. I'm getting the message that viruses are an essential part of actually the way the human experience happens. It not only shapes people's lives and affects people's lives, but it also shapes society and is a very important enabler that allows things to happen in society. Not just through making people ill, but because they actually involve themselves in our cellular structure at a genetic level, and can also be used as a sort of a programming device, I'm being told, to actually make our bodies and our minds do certain things. Again, I'm being told that we mustn't forget that viruses have been around way longer than human beings, and have been very successful in their particular lives, their particular choices that they make. And viruses also have an origin story, I'm being told. Viruses have a consciousness just like we do, and they have their own center of consciousness. And when viruses were created by people in other realms, they were created for a particular reason, and to cause issues at various times. I'm being told that the choices that we make and the lives that we choose to lead when we sit in another dimension and make those choices, viruses are very integral in that, because they are a form of consciousness that is removed from us but can be part of us and can actually change the way that we lead our lives. They can change it positively, I'm being told, as well as negatively. I think it's really interesting that a virus is almost used as a control mechanism for humanity in order to affect its change, to make it behave in a certain way, and to progress a particular agenda that has been decided probably by us before we became alive. So I would naturally want to ask the question now, so why, if viruses are so important to us, why do we have such horrible viruses that kill people on such massive scales, or infect people that cause them to have a lifetime of of sadness and misery. Again, as I'm saying that, it's being presented to me that I'm seeing it completely the wrong way. I shouldn't be seeing it in terms of the negative impact. I should be seeing it in terms of not so much the positive impact, but the point of a virus and the point of human existence is that we have a particular way of choosing the life that we want to lead, and viruses are used as a sort of enabler, as a way of adjusting our life and making things happen in our physical existence. And concerning people who are very ill or people who die from viruses, I'm just getting this message that is a purpose, that was a choice, that was something that a choice that was made by a person or these people before they became human. And he said, I'm getting this impression that rather like we use medicine as a way to cure our illnesses, as we see it, as a way to prolong our life and stop us being ill, then you have to see a virus as a mechanism that is there designed to change our life or even end our life as part of the process that you choose to end human life. But it's much more than just ending human life. It's affecting human life, and it's affecting our choices. And I'm being told that viruses are also a very useful way to convey information, and they actually contain a lot more information that can affect our cells than we are actually currently aware of. Which is very interesting, because I have heard all sorts of stories about these new vaccines, these mRNA vaccines that have been designed and have done wonders, I think, in terms of helping people overcome things like COVID. But equally, although they apparently don't have any genetic material in them, they seem to, they're finding out, they seem to be having some effect on the human body beyond just affecting the stuff they're supposed to affect in order to make us immune to viruses. And I'm receiving this message, and that's saying, that's why viruses are so hard to get rid of. That's why they adapt and change, because, again, it's quite a futile process for us to eliminate viruses or to stop them from the work that they have to do, because they're there for a distinct purpose. And they're there to enable or to change or to affect the course of a person's life or indeed society's life. And I just received another message. It's coming through. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but it's a very strong impression, is that, and maybe it's happening now, but the person is saying to me that we need to stop seeing viruses as the enemy. We should be using viruses in order to improve our lives, and how if we would put a lot of time and effort into the research on how to manipulate viruses in order to be able to use them to improve our health and to improve our thinking, our capacity to widen our consciousness, then maybe truly then would we understand what viruses are all about. That's an interesting thought, that if science actually spent more time, instead of trying to combat viruses, spent more time understanding how they could use viruses to positively affect the human species, we may be able to change a lot of undesirable things that happen to us. And now I'm receiving an entity, and she says her name is Betty. So Betty, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and who you are? Betty was a musician, and I get the impression that she played a violin, and she played this violin in an orchestra, and she really enjoyed playing this instrument very much and giving pleasure to people. And Betty, could you tell me how you died? And Betty is telling me that she died from a form of, I think, almost a neuron disease. It actually affected her fingers and her playing, and that she couldn't play anymore. And it was a very sad, slow decline. She's telling me that this was so devastating to her and to her family because of her illness that she decided, and she's telling me she had some help to end her life using some form of medicine because she just didn't want to slowly die and to get worse, and for her family around her to feel sad and see her go that way. So Betty, what can you tell me about that? Is that something that we should be doing? Should we be assisting ourselves or asking people to assist us to die if we feel that we're going to die a horrible death anyway because of some horrible disease? Yeah, and Betty is actually saying to me that she's aware that in a lot of societies it was always quite all right for people to end their life, or for their friends or family to help them to end their life if they were suffering from some horrendous illness that they were going to die from, and perhaps in a very painful and unpleasant way. And she's saying to me that we've kind of forgotten that. Because of modern medicine and perhaps modern morality, it's become more normal for us to have medical interventions and to be trying to cure the person until the last minute, until they die anyway. She's mentioning chemotherapy and why people take chemotherapy for cancer. And she is almost indicating to me the futility of all of this stuff, because ultimately, again, we have made these decisions when we should die, and by trying to prolong our life through medical intervention is probably not a particularly brilliant idea. But in terms of ending our life deliberately, maybe going off to something like that clinic in Switzerland she's mentioning, like Dignitas, where you go to end your life and you pay to be given, be administered some form of barbiturates. She's saying that from her point of view, there is no problem with that. People, again, have the free will to do that if they like, and society shouldn't be frowning on people who make that choice at the end of their lives. If they feel that at the end of their lives, life is so unpleasant, or unpleasant for those around them, we should try to remember that it's a perfectly reasonable thing for us to be able to do that. It's not the same as, she's saying, it's not the same as just taking your life because you don't want to be alive anymore because you're having a hard time. You are at the end of your life and your body is dying, and if you wish to speed that process up, there really is nothing wrong with that, and society should really change its opinions on this much more than it has, and accept that if somebody is very, very ill and there really is no hope of survival, then why not? There's no reason why we have to go through an agonizing death. It's not particularly for any great karmic reason, I'm being told. And I'm being given again the message very strongly that the way our society is moving, I'm being told at the moment, is that there are so many difficulties that people encounter, and then there's so many illnesses that people contract as we get to live older, that this question of assisted suicide is going to become so much more important. And I'm really having the strong feeling that I need to tell you that we need to really, as a society, push to change people's impression of this, and allow people, if they feel that they wish to end their life, that this isn't a crime, and this isn't immoral, and for people to help people, it has to be understood that this is a good thing to do. It's funny, actually, and Shelby, who sent me that message earlier, it's funny how the course of these messages seems to have moved towards people who are probably having a trouble in life, because it would seem that Shelby's mother, who she was trying to get in touch with, was most definitely helping people who had issues with drugs and suicide. And it's just occurring to me that maybe, Shelby, that's who we're in contact with. I think maybe it is your mother. and she is actually trying to say that she is, or not your mother, I think it was your aunt, wasn't it? And I think, yes, it's I think this person could well be that person, and she is trying to give that impression that she is still involved in helping people who are sick, who are suicidal, who are involved with drugs. But I think she's also trying to give the impression that where she is, and now she can see the whole point of existence, the whole point of how we live as humans, that the message that she wants to give is that she can help people by passing the message to us now. And that's probably the message that she has passed about assisted suicide. And that I think that's really the big, strong message that she's got. We can help those people who are alive to pass with dignity. And that is, if you like, what she is involved in. And I think that somehow this is also connected with viruses. I think there is obviously that sense that entities are there to help assist people to die, if that is what's required. So it's a sort of a helping hand, and all of this is part of some bigger scheme of things. This entity is also saying to me quite strongly that a lot of people do not want to die, and they want to live forever. And she has a view on that, and she thinks that there is, again, nothing wrong with people doing their very best to extend their life, as long as it's being done in such a way that you're not sick in the process of doing it. It's something that is going to mean that you're going to enjoy your life, and that you can be of benefit to other people while you're still alive. And I think the idea of living a long time is, again, I'm being told, is something that we're also going to have to get used to very much, because so much is going to be passed down through the various dimensions to us to enable us to live much longer than we do currently. And I'm being told that there is the capacity within us that we could, if we like, live nearly twice our age than we're living at the moment. Most people seem to be dying in their 80s. We could potentially live 100, 200 years, I'm being told, if we use the right mechanisms. And this has got to do with the virus, to do with viruses, I'm being told, and it's to do with research that we can do that will alter something in us that will enable us to allow the various cells in our body to live longer and perhaps not die prematurely. That's an interesting thought. I obviously have the feeling that this is a bit of an issue if you're worried about overpopulation of the planet, because if everyone is going to be living much longer, but I'm being told that is not the case, because again, these are the choices that we make. Not everybody wants to live long lives. Not everybody wants to live so long. And the nature of our human existence is that we do die of disease, we die of war, we have accidents, and in a way the whole natural order of the world will pretty much take care of that. But there is, again, I'm being told, nothing wrong, and it shouldn't be condemned if there are people who wish to live a longer life and want to prolong their lives through new medical interventions. And apparently that really is something that's going to be happening in the next 20 years, I'm being told. And I think that came from Betty. So thank you very much. That was really nice to talk to you. So again, the end of episode 9, and I would encourage anyone who would like to know something about a concept or to make contact with anyone, please feel free, contact me on the email.